There is enough energy inside your body right now to destroy an entire city. Not metaphorically, not in some poetic sense, actually, physically, literally, the atoms in your hand, the molecules in your blood, the mass of your bones, all of it contains energy, enormous energy, terrifying energy, more energy than the largest bomb you have ever heard of, and yet you sit there peacefully. Your hand does not explode, your body does not release this energy. Why not? What is holding it in? And more importantly, why is it there at all? This is not philosophy. This is not a thought experiment. This is the actual physical reality of the universe you inhabit. Mass and energy are not two separate things. They are the same thing, the same substance, wearing different faces, and the relationship between them is so precise, so absolute that we can write it in the simplest of equations. But understanding what this equation truly means, what it reveals about reality, requires us to rethink everything we believe about matter, energy, motion, and light itself. Let us begin with what seems obvious. Look at the world around you. You see objects, a table, a chair, a stone. These things feel solid, permanent, stable. We call this property mass. Mass is the stuff of things. It is what makes objects resist being pushed. It is what gives them weight when gravity pulls on them. Mass seems fundamentally different from energy. Energy is movement, heat, light, force. Energy does things. Mass simply exists. This is how we experience the world, and for thousands of years this made perfect sense. Matter was matter. Energy was energy. They interacted, certainly. You could burn wood and release heat. You could lift a stone and store energy in its position. But the wood itself was not energy. The stone was not energy. They were objects that contained or released energy, but they were not made of energy, except they are. Here is what reality actually tells us. Every single kilogram of mass, any mass, anywhere in the universe contains a fixed, specific, enormous amount of energy. And that amount is determined by one of the most famous equations ever written, E equals mc squared. Let us look at this carefully. E is energy, m is mass, and c is the speed of light in empty space. The speed of light is approximately 300 million meters per second. That is fast, unimaginably fast. Light could circle the entire Earth more than 7 times in a single second. But in this equation, we do not just use the speed of light, we square it, we multiply it by itself. 300 million times 300 million equals 90 quadrillion. That is a 9 followed by 16 zeros. So when we say E equals mc squared, we are saying that the energy locked inside any amount of mass is equal to that mass multiplied by 90 quadrillion. 1 kilogram of anything, bread, water, steel, air, contains 90 quadrillion joules of energy. To put that in perspective, the atomic bomb that destroyed Hiroshima released approximately 60 trillion joules. 1 kilogram of mass, if you could convert all of it into energy, contains more than 1,000 times that amount. 1 kilogram, the mass of a textbook, the mass of a bottle of water. You, sitting there right now, contain enough energy in your body to destroy not just a building, but an entire city, and so does everyone else. And so does every object around you. The energy is real, it is there, it has always been there. You are, in a very literal sense, made of frozen energy. But why? Why does mass contain energy at all? And why is the conversion factor the speed of light squared? Why not some other number? Why light? To understand this, we must first understand what light actually is, and why its speed is so special. Light moves. You already know this. Sunlight travels from the sun to the earth. A flashlight beam crosses a room, but light does something no other thing in the universe does. It moves at the same speed for everyone, no matter how they themselves are moving. Imagine you are standing still and you measure the speed of a passing car. You measure 60 kilometers per hour. Now imagine you are in another car, driving in the same direction at 40 kilometers per hour. You measure the same car again. This time it appears to be moving at only 20 kilometers per hour relative to you. This is common sense. Speeds add and subtract depending on your motion. If you run towards something, it approaches faster. If you run away, it approaches slower. But light does not do this. If you are standing still and you measure a beam of light, you measure 300 million meters per second. If you are in a spaceship moving at half the speed of light and you measure that same beam, you still measure 300 million meters per second. Exactly the same. The speed does not change. It does not add. It does not subtract. Light always moves at the same speed, no matter who measures it or how fast they are moving. This is not intuition. This is not what we expect. But this is what reality does. Every experiment, every measurement, every observation confirms it. The speed of light in empty space is constant, absolute, universal. And this changes everything, because if the speed of light is always the same, then something else must be flexible. Time and space themselves must bend, stretch, and compress to make the speed of light constant for all observers. When you move very fast, time slows down for you. Distances contract, your measurements of duration and length change, but the speed of light remains fixed, always exactly c, always 300 million meters per second. This constancy is not arbitrary, it is not a coincidence, it is built into the structure of the universe itself. Light is not just another thing that moves, it is the speed at which reality propagates. It is the speed at which cause and effect travel. It is the maximum speed at which information, force, or influence can move from one place to another. And because the speed of light is so fundamental, it connects mass and energy. Here is how energy is the ability to do work, to cause change, to make things happen. When something moves, it has energy of motion, which we call kinetic energy. The faster it moves, the more energy it has. But as something accelerates closer and closer to the speed of light, something strange occurs. It becomes harder and harder to accelerate further. You must add more and more energy to produce smaller and smaller increases in speed. Why? Because as you approach the speed of light, the object's resistance to acceleration increases. Its inertia grows. It behaves as though it is becoming heavier. In fact, it is becoming heavier, not in the sense that new matter is being added, but in the sense that the energy you are adding to the object increases its mass. Energy has. Mass has energy. They are equivalent. This is the core insight. Mass is not a separate thing from energy. Mass is energy that is not currently moving as motion. It is energy in a bound, stable, concentrated form. And because the speed of light is the universal constant that governs how energy and motion relate to each other, the speed of light appears in the equation that connects mass and energy. When we write E equals mc squared, we are saying that the energy equivalent of a given mass is that mass times the speed of light times the speed of light. The reason c appears twice the reason we square it is because of how energy scales with velocity. Kinetic energy goes as the square of speed, and the speed of light is the ultimate speed, the boundary speed, the speed at which light itself moves and beyond which nothing can go. So the total energy locked inside mass is related to the square of that ultimate speed. Think of it this way: mass is energy at rest. If you could take that mass and convert it entirely into energy of motion, into radiation, into light itself, that energy would move at the speed of light, and the amount of energy released is the mass times c squared. This is not theoretical. This happens. This is real. When a uranium nucleus splits in a nuclear reactor, a tiny amount of its mass disappears. Not much, less than 1%, but that tiny amount of mass converts directly into energy, heat, radiation, kinetic energy of the flying fragments. The mass before the split is slightly more than the mass after. The difference has become energy. And because c squared is so large, even a minuscule loss of mass releases enormous energy. The sun does this every second. Deep in the core of the sun, hydrogen nuclei collide with such force and heat that they fuse together into helium. For hydrogen nuclei become one helium nucleus, but one helium nucleus has slightly less mass than four separate hydrogen nuclei. About 0.7% less. That missing mass becomes energy, light, heat, radiation. Every second, the sun converts 4 million tons of its own mass into pure energy. 4 million tons every single second. And that energy is what lights the earth. It is what warms your face. It is what makes life possible. The sun is not burning fuel in the way a fire burns wood. The sun is converting mass directly into energy. It is annihilating a tiny fraction of itself and releasing the energy that was locked inside that mass. This has been happening for nearly 5 billion years, and it will continue for billions more, because even though 4 million tons per second sounds enormous, the sun is so massive that it has enough mass to sustain this process for an unimaginable length of time. You are made of sunlight, not metaphorically, literally, the atoms. In your body, the carbon, the oxygen, the nitrogen were forged inside stars that lived billions of years ago. Those stars converted mass into energy through fusion. They created heavier elements, and when those stars died, they scattered those elements into space. Those atoms eventually became part of the cloud of gas that formed our sun and our earth, and now they are you. But the story goes even deeper. Imagine an electron and its antimatter counterpart, a positron. If they meet, they annihilate. each other completely, total annihilation. Both particles disappear entirely. Their mass does not remain. It converts into pure energy, into photons, into light. The electron and positron had mass. After annihilation, there is no mass, only energy. E equals mc squared tells us exactly how much energy appears. If the electron has a certain mass and the positron has the same mass, the total energy released is the sum of their masses times c squared. Every bit of their mass becomes energy. 100% conversion. This is the most complete transformation possible. Matter into light, mass into energy, and it obeys the equation precisely. Now consider the reverse. If you have enough energy concentrated in a small enough region of space, that energy can spontaneously become particles, become mass. This happens constantly in high energy particle accelerators. Photons, which are light, which have no mass, can collide with such energy that they produce an electron, and a positron. Energy becomes matter. The energy of the photons is converted into the mass of the particles. Again, E equals mc squared governs the process exactly. Mass and energy are not two things. They are one thing. The universe does not distinguish between them. It converts one into the other freely, constantly, according to this simple, precise, beautiful equation. So why doesn't everything explode? If you contain the energy of 1,000 atomic bombs, why are you sitting there peacefully? Why does the chair not detonate? Why does the air not erupt? Because mass is stable. Mass is energy in a bound state. The particles that make up your atoms, the protons, neutrons, and electrons, are held together by forces. The strong nuclear force binds protons and neutrons into the nucleus. The electromagnetic force holds electrons in orbit around the nucleus. These forces are strong, extraordinarily strong. To release the energy locked in mass, you must overcome these forces. You must either split the nucleus, fuse nuclei together, or annihilate matter with antimatter. Ordinary matter is stable because the forces holding it together are far stronger than the random motions and interactions happening at normal temperatures. You cannot simply tap a rock and release its energy. You cannot burn matter the way you burn wood and extract the energy of E equals mc squared. Burning wood is a chemical reaction. It rearranges atoms. It releases energy stored in the bonds between atoms, but the atoms themselves remain. The total mass barely changes. To access the energy in E equals mc squared, you need nuclear reactions or matter antimatter annihilation. These are processes that change the nucleus itself or destroy particles entirely. They are rare. They require extreme conditions. That is why you are safe. That is why the world is stable. But the energy is still there. Every atom in your body, every particle, every bit of mass anywhere in the universe contains this energy. It is not potential energy waiting to be released. It is actual energy. The mass is energy. The energy is mass. They are the same substance. Think about what this means. When you hold a stone in your hand, you are not holding inert matter. You are holding a tremendous reservoir of energy, bound and concentrated into a stable form. The stone is made of energy. The atoms are made of energy. Even the forces holding the atoms together are forms of energy. Everything is energy, taking different shapes. This is the reality that E equals mc squared reveals. The equation is simple, 5 symbols, but what it tells us is profound. It tells us that the universe is far more unified than it appears. It tells us that mass is not a separate category of existence. It is energy at rest, frozen energy, bound energy, energy that has taken the form of particles and objects and matter. And because energy is conserved, because the total energy in an isolated system never changes, mass is also conserved in a deeper sense. Mass can convert into other forms of energy. Energy can convert into mass, but the total, when you account for all forms of energy, including mass, remains constant. This changes how we see everything. A fire does not destroy the wood, it rearranges it. The atoms become carbon dioxide and water vapor and ash. The mass is still there, slightly changed by the energy released. A star does not vanish when it fuses hydrogen into helium. It converts a tiny fraction of its mass into light, but the total energy, including the mass that remains, is conserved. The universe is not a collection of separate things interacting. It is a single, unified system of energy, constantly changing form, constantly moving, constantly transforming, but always obeying the same fundamental laws. And we can understand this. We can see this. We can write it in an equation so simple that it fits on a single line. E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. This is not magic. This is not mystery. This is reality, observed, measured, tested, confirmed in every experiment, every reactor, every star, every particle collision. It is true, it is precise, it is beautiful. When you look at the world now, you can see it differently. That table is not just wood. It is energy bound into the form of atoms, held by forces resting in a stable configuration. The light from the sun is not just brightness. It is the mass of the sun, converted into radiation, traveling across space to warm your skin, your own. Body is not just flesh and bone. It is a pattern of energy, organized into molecules, into cells, into life. Everything is energy. Everything is connected. Everything obeys the same laws. And the most remarkable thing of all is not that the universe works this way, it is that we can know that it works this way. We can observe, we can measure, we can reason, we can understand. A simple equation, written in a moment of clarity, reveals a truth about all of existence. The mass you see is energy, the energy you feel is mass, they are one. This is the universe as it actually is, not as it seems, not as we imagine, but as it truly, fundamentally, beautifully is. And now you know.